welcome to Experience This, show 39, I believe. Today we're going to have a fun episode, fun for me at least. We're going to talk about Google and AI and search and travel discovery and all that good stuff. But let's go around and do a quick intro. I'm Christian Watts with Magpie Travel.
I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'm Lori Timoney with GoCity.
Hey, it's Bruce Rosard. I'm one of the co-founders of Arrival, and definitely looking to learn a lot from our guests, Brennan and Janette. Brennan, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, Brennan here, founder and mascot of Propellic Travel Marketing.
And I'm Janette Roush. I'm the Executive Vice President of Marketing and Digital for New York City Tourism and Conventions, the official DMO and Convention and Visitors Bureau for the 5 boroughs of New York City.
Excellent. So I just first want to sort of set the stage. We're not going to talk about trip planning today. We've all agreed on that. There's been lots of discussions about that. We're talking about search. When it's search, it's generally Google we're going to talk about. If somebody wants to mention Bing, of course, they're welcome to, or Perplexity or something else. And it's all, there's been a lot of discussion around LLMs versus search and what's going to happen to Google. Nobody knows the answer, right? Which is kind of why we're discussing this. I think a piece that hasn't really been discussed enough is we know that LLMs, the large language models are coming, the chat GPTs, the Geminis, they're coming. Meta is now here and that's coming fast. But what we don't know is how to then how to change marketing for your products as a tour operator. And there are no answers. Google puts out guidelines right on SEO and lots of other things, but there are no guidelines on how to market to the large language models. And there's been some testing. I'm sure we can go through that. But it's a bit of an unknown. And I think it's going to be, well, it is going to become increasingly important because if the large language model doesn't know about you, then everybody using that for search is not going to know about you. So it's something I think people need to start looking at and like to just have a discussion around that and what we think might be the direction of it. Not necessarily tactically, but just sort of a general direction. And it's all guesswork, which makes this kind of interesting. But Brennan, do you mind just giving us a sort of quick overview on where, and Google's not a set thing, right? We're not all going to see the same Google search results, but could you give us an overview on what you look at today and what parts of it might be generated?
I'll pull this up real quick. And one thing I'll say is what I'm about to show you for the first time, I've presented this a number of times. So the first time yesterday when I was presenting this, I heard someone in the audience say, "Oh, I've seen that." Someone who didn't know what it was because Google's testing it now in practice. So people might be seeing this. Might not last based on the rollback of cookies yesterday, just like that, but we'll see. And the rollback of their distribution of that third-party cookie discontinuation process that they've been working on for a decade now. So really the thought is Google has always talked about, this is a quote from their founder in 2000, let's give users what they want without them having to explicitly ask for it. That's kind of the overarching, the closer we can get to give someone what they want without them having to do work to find it and ask for it, they're going to do everything they can to move in that direction. If you go to Google in 1999, it's going to have a search box and 2 buttons. And the same thing is true in 2001, in 2005, a search box and 2 buttons, 2007, a search box and 2 buttons, 2014, a search box and 2 buttons, all the way through 2022, 2024, a search box and 2 buttons, right? ChatGPT comes out, Google wants to stay competitive. They start working on this product at the time called Search Generative Experience. It's maintained that name. I'm going to skip forward because I was given a minute for this part. It looks like this, basically. You search something, and above the fold, above all of the blue links that you typically see on Google, you get a result that has a LLM-generated answer to your question. It's odd the specific searches this has come up on. There's been some research that I've got later on in this that talks about like it can be anywhere from 18 to 70% of searches depended on how Google's decided to roll it out and test it with users. But it's got a couple of elements. You've got the answer, and then you've got these cards next to it that are like rankings. The odd thing is it doesn't work at all like organic search rankings. It's definitely not the top 3 results. So at a very high level, when we think about what is happening here, it's rather than answering something with a list of websites, Google's moving above and beyond featured snippets and giving you the full answer in search, typically with 0 attribution. So Google's taking their corpus of information and answering it in search. The working word on the street is this is going to roll out for everybody, or at least be announced at Google's I/O conference on May 14th, I think is the date, a couple of days after Mother's Day. I think that's it's quite possible. But the weird thing is it's just completely different ranking algorithm for these sites over here than organic search results.
Can you point out the labs thing on your screen, Brennan, just so that, because you have to opt into
Yeah.
this right now.
So right now, if you have a personal Google account, you can't do it through a Google Workspace account, but there's a little labs thing right up here in the corner that you can see. Or I think it's search lab, like just search Google Search Labs from a Google personal account. If you want to explicitly turn this on rather than wait for Google to roll it out, you can. Note that in several occasions, like this one, as with any situation, you might ask Google how to boil eggs, and it'll tell you to turn the stove on and boil the eggs 7 times to get a fully boiled egg. I caution you that egg will not taste very good if you follow these instructions.
Interesting.
In your example, though, Brennan, where's the advertising?
So this is the funny thing. So there's actually it's one of the commentary pieces that we've got. It's like Google's testing all these new ad units. Really, what we're seeing in for the first time, I'm seeing so many changes in ads that I've never seen before. Yesterday, I searched something. It was a hotel name, and I saw 2 organic results before I saw the first ad, which I've never seen on Google before. That was really interesting, having non-sponsored before sponsored. The idea is you're going to have ad units that are similar to the previous ad units we've had, followed by informational search results, or SGE results, Search Generative Experience results, and then the 10 blue links. The interesting thing about the ad units is so Google has a beta deck that they send out to advertisers that spend a certain amount. I don't know exactly what that threshold is, but we got the beta deck, and we did not see any SGE advertising units in that beta
SGE?
deck.
Mm.
Yeah.
Can
We
you
didn't see
define
it.
SGE?
Oh, sorry. Yes. SGE is this thing. Search Generative Experience is this whole result box. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's the new answer format that gives a generative answer rather than blue links is SGE, Search Generative Experience. It's, I think, run by Google's Gemini model. Do y'all know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, Janette's saying that. Yeah.
So if you
So,
typed in, I know you're not on a browser, but if you, just as a sort of further example, if you have opted into this labs thing and you type in San Francisco trip, you're actually going to get an itinerary. That's the
Yes.
default result now for a trip, and you can create a shopping list for your trip, and that's the sort of thing that's coming into our space. So
Yeah,
where
it's
there's
eating the
a
top of the
Google's
funnel.
going to try and show you something that's more useful than 10 blue links have been gone for a while, but they're going to show you something more useful if it works.
It's eating the entire top of the funnel is what we're seeing. That
Yeah.
70% is if your company succeeds in the top of the funnel and uses remarketing as a primary advertising strategy, you're going to lose all that initial third-party data because nobody's clicking on the sites.
Yeah. And I don't believe a word of like launch dates, because I don't think Google ever has launch dates for this stuff, but it's all good rumor.
Yeah.
Janette, you posted something on LinkedIn a few days ago from a company, and it doesn't matter the company's name because it probably wasn't very positive, and they were trying to sell you marketing services, I think, right?
Not me, so it was,
Somebody.
Friend through a friend, but, there were some comments on the post where it's like, yes, I have heard this, because the question, like our convention sales team, they're very interested, like even pre-SGE, it's like, great, ChatGPT exists now. How do we make sure that ChatGPT, when a meeting planner, a business event planner goes in and starts to compare destinations, which certainly that's something that someone is doing somewhere, how do we make sure that it says great things about us? And it's like, you can't, but then, then I heard this story that somebody was trying to sell the service of, we will change what ChatGPT says about your company, your destination. And I'm like, that stinks to me. That can't possibly be true. But then over the weekend, I saw a link, in a random newsletter completely unrelated to tourism. There was a link to this study that I, posted along with this LinkedIn post that says somebody has done research on STS, which is, I'm gonna make sure I don't screw this up, strategic text sequences. and using these strategic text sequences to almost inject your information, not into the language model itself, but into these SGE results. So it's claiming in this paper that this could possibly be a way of changing, it's SEO, but for the SGE process. Noting that these strategic text sequences, this is actually something that bad actors use in order to gamify, these results in a bad way. So this is something that can be used to kind of change the results negatively, or to inject some kind of, poison into a prompt that's going to infect your machine in some way. And so the study that was done was saying, look, great, here's a way that you can use it to have your product name show up first in these SGE results. And so real strategic text sequences, this is a computer program, like it's code that you would test in an LLM, all of these different, like you would use an AI to test infinite numbers of text sequences, changing one character at a time to see which one ultimately affects the output of the LLM. But, obviously, I don't think most of us could literally do that. And so there is a way that you can fake your STS results, that you can't literally probably on your own run the programs that result in these text sequences. But the paper, and then I was playing around with AI in terms of learning more about this myself. And they're like, well, there's ways that you can mimic an STS result by doing A/B testing, but testing text sequences that more directly, it's different from SEO because you are inputting into your content these text sequences that are specifically tapping into both human emotion and leaning into the intent behind the person's query. And so theoretically, whatever model is your favorite one to work with, you could paste in your content that you're planning on posting. And maybe you already do this, right? Where you're like, can you help me optimize this for search? Like, what terms should I kind of put in here so that it's more likely to show up at the top of those results? But then you could also say, I'm interested in testing different strategic text sequences to see if that helps lift up my content. And the idea is that it would then suggest to you content that you could insert into this content you're getting ready to post. The idea is that you want to make it feel like the writing isn't generated by AI. And so we do that through including human stories in the writing, because AI writing typically isn't today faking real life human stories, and that you're making it, making that emotional connection, and that you're really driving at not just the answer to the question, but why is the user asking that question? So it's like layers on layers.
Yeah, I'm just going to stop for a quick technicality, and then I want to get some input from maybe Laurie and Bruce. But just on a technical level, there's two things here, right? One, and some LLMs, all LLMs are trained. They start training on this date and they finish training on that date. That's why we have this thing that they're not up to date, and that's just the way they are. Once the thing's trained, it's set. It doesn't change until they retrain it 6 months later. So first of all, as a tour operator or a destination, you want to get your information into that training data so that it knows good things about New York or San Francisco bus tours or whatever. So that's one, you want to get your data into that. So you want your data in the training material, which nobody knows what the training material is. And then the second thing you want to do is a lot of these LLM tools, when you're searching, it's searching its model, but it's also browsing at the same time. That's when you can ask, what was the score of the 76ers game last night? And some of these models will go out and do a quick search. They'll pull up Google results. They'll summarize those Google results and show them. So it can actually get live data. So as an operator, you want to be in both of those things. You want to be in the pre-training text, and you want to be in the results, which most likely they're going to be from the top of Google to then get summarized and put back in. So there's two kind of things that we all want to be exposed to in the future. Those are the two areas. And which of those wins in the end, who knows? But we all as companies in this space need to have our products and companies in that data. Or, as Brennan started out with, we're all going to start losing traffic to those that do.
Strategic text services, sequences.
Which are typically, they are generated through an algorithm like the greedy coordinate gradient. So, yeah, this is
This is not a big word zone. Come on,
Right.
Jeanette, don't make
And,
us feel
You know,
bad.
at the beginning, Jeanette, you were talking about you got some inquiry and it was kind of scammy. They could help you create them. But as you got further in, it's like, you need to be able to do this if you want to get found in the LLMs, right?
Well, according to the one study that had some success using this methodology to affect an LLM. And Christian's right, like, I'm assuming the people doing the study were working with some live model versus anything that we do. If we're looking to affect the underlying model and not just the search generative experience results, then there's a waiting game, because right now the models aren't updated every day. You know, that's something that could change this year. Like, that's a choice that the companies are making, not to release constantly updated models. But I think it's fair to assume within a year, these models are going to self-update constantly.
It's a choice, and it's $200 million to train the latest one as well. So maybe that's fine for Google. So one of the questions is, what would you do today? So the latest interesting, I think, that came out was Meta. So Meta released their latest model last week. It's really good. There's 4 models now which are almost the same: Meta, Anthropic, Google, and ChatGPT. And Meta, I think everyone knows, is Facebook. Now you can, right at the top of your Instagram and your Facebook and your WhatsApp, you have a channel for Meta. Those are all LLM connected. So it's everywhere now, because that's 3 billion users. The other thing that Facebook did, or Meta did, is they've got to deal with Google. Did you guys see that? So if you search on your Facebook Meta and you search for San Francisco bus tours, it'll show you a Google link to the bus tour, which is interesting. So they've made a deal somewhere. But is Facebook trying to be a search engine with these links is another interesting sort of angle. Brennan, what would you recommend to a client today for the last pieces to get your products discovered by the LLM and by the connected?
I'm going to talk about the connected because that's where my expertise is, and I'll leave the LLM influence to y'all. So Google patented something recently. It's they're like an information gain scoring system is the best way that I could describe it. I'll show you what it looks like. Let's see, here it is. So what we're looking at really is Google can, this is all, everything I'm telling you, I do not have data to substantiate. I want to
Excellent.
Put that in front, okay? But this is theory. This is why Google's doing this. There's conversations happening about this in my industry. It's this information gain scoring process where they can look at the corpus of information that exists on the internet and then compare a specific item to that and say, is this adding something new? And when you think about it, it's funny because content writing has been a huge part of organic search, right? And for about 3 months there, everybody thought, oh, cool, I could just make that easy and just ask ChatGPT or Bard at the time to create my content for me. And for a very brief period of time, yes, there was some gold there. But now anytime a computer writes about content, obviously it's influenced by what's currently available to that computer and whatever it was used to train that model. So it's not able to produce much new content, right? Or new perspectives, unique new perspectives. And then you bring a human into it and you hire a content writer to write about something, like just a generic content writer. Let's take Janette, for instance. If Janette, her DMO, hired a content writer that doesn't know New York, just like they probably would have 4 or 5 years ago, not them, but like previously it was best practice just hire a content writer to write content. You need to hire someone to write content that knows a destination now. That's the only way that they can add information, which is likely what's going to be able to get you to show up over here. because this is going to be your generic answer, and then Google is going to give you unique perspectives. I don't know if everybody's noticed that Reddit shows up in about 89% of their
Yeah.
searches now when you search something, so much so that I think Reddit actually crashed today due to traffic, a level of traffic they hadn't seen before. I saw news about that. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't dig into it, but it'd be funny if that was true. Google wants to highlight that human element, is what all of these moves, their Google unique perspectives and what they call hidden gem content is. And the idea is, our recommendation is, you're going to have to spend more time, develop unique research, talk to customers, build content that is above and beyond what's available. You can't hire a content writer that's a generalist anymore. You can't use AI to write content because it's going to write exactly what's already there, or at least if your goal is to rank in search. You need to add something new.
Yeah, AI
That's-
is a great remixer, right? As opposed to really coming up with something brand new.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
don't
then
agree
the
with
other
that.
thing.
That's fine.
Okay, I want to hear. Do you want me to tell the other thing, or do you want to talk about that? Because I'm actually curious to hear what your thoughts are there.
Go to your other thing, and then we'll go to Janette, and I'll give you my opinion.
Okay, got it. All right. So the other thing we're thinking is what's getting answered most frequently is top of funnel search terms. Things that are early in the travel research process, specifically to travel, what to do, itineraries, where to go. But when you're actually looking for a operator provider, early on, particularly when we were testing SGE, Search Generative Experience, we were not seeing many result formats that would show up when you're looking for specific operators, or you're looking for a transactional term. Not as often as if it's a top of funnel term. Add to that people still need to make their transactions somewhere, and it will be the case someday, but today you can't give your credit card information to a large language model to make a purchase, at least not Google's, right? So if you move your marketing strategy further down the funnel and stop focusing on some of those top of funnel terms, top of funnel areas of focus, you'll likely have more success lower on in the funnel, because people still need to go make a transaction somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it, Christian.
No, I'm gonna go to Janette, because I think she was actually going in the direction I was gonna go in.
Oh, maybe I was thinking about, have any of you heard Ben Hammersley speak like at conferences? He was at the South Dakota Tourism Conference back in January. So he's a futurist. He doesn't appear to be online anywhere in any meaningful way. So I don't know how they found him, but he gave this great talk about the enshittification of the internet. And so he walked through step by step how when you search for, top restaurants in, Pierre, South Dakota, how both the regular search results and even the search generative results are just people saying, hey, this is what Yelp says are the 10 best restaurants in Pierre, South Dakota. Here's what TripAdvisor says are those top 10 restaurants. And so all of this work that Google is doing to try to get ahead of people not using search anymore, because why are you going to ask for a bunch of places where you might find the answer if you could go to ChatGPT and just get the answer on a plate? Like that, the process of us migrating to just trusting language models more, it's being sped up, because now with AI, it's so easy for you to create that fake travel blog that has all of, he's like, nobody is sending restaurant reviewers to Pierre, South Dakota to populate their family travel blog. And so the internet is now just weighted down with mediocre content that's largely being created by AI. And so it's like the snake is eating its own tail. We're going to learn to stop using search if Google doesn't kind of clean up its house a little more quickly.
Christian, what's your thought on new information from AI?
For Laurie, did you have something on that, or?
No, I think it's so interesting that, where Google Gemini is a result of LLM AI, and yet now we're at the place where you can't use AI to write your travel blogs and your content, because basically it's not going to show up in the new form of search, right? So it's just kind of a funny place to be in. But I think also, everything I've been reading lately about it, I kind of like this idea that maybe I'm not going to sift through a million different websites and links to get to the answer that I need to get to. And when if you look back at the olden days, do you remember the time when Google, you first would, you put in a query and you would actually get a bunch of organic search results that would actually come down before the sponsored advertising. And then that just kind of went away, and it was something you valued because you knew it was organic. You just felt like, okay, well, it's not somebody that's trying to make money off of me. This is actually a result that it was more meaningful, I guess, or at least I think people felt like it was more meaningful. And now it almost seems like that's the way it's sort of moving in this direction again of producing really valid results that require now businesses to be producing good content, to ensuring their reviews are accurate and up to date and up to speed, that their company is not saying one thing over here and another thing over here. And I think there could be a lot of good that comes out of it, actually. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said it's the perception of it being the best results, because I think that's what it is. Behind the scenes, there's a million people like Brennan trying to hack every last word and every
Yes.
last thing.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
And everything
Accurate.
It's a game, right? It's a game. The stuff that you said, Brennan, with I always go back, and you started out with this. I always go back to the Google mission statement that they are trying to organize the world's information and make it discoverable, and I always go back to that when I talk about Google, because I think that by doing that and by sticking just to that mission, they've done fairly well for themselves, right? They've got a $2 trillion company. And I do agree about the unique content. I think that's valuable. But when it comes to AI searches of that unique content, the results back are going to be the average of the content. So everywhere you walk now, whether it's a coffee shop or a grocery store, it's Taylor Swift. That's all I hear. I don't mind it. I like Taylor Swift.
I'm from Kansas City. I'm all for it.
Right. So for each individual coffee shop, you should be playing a lot of Taylor Swift, because obviously she's the most popular musician on the planet. So you're right. Each individual coffee shop's correct to play a lot of Taylor Swift. But when each makes that decision to all play Taylor Swift, that's all we get, which is where Google is, right? They're trying to show us the best results, and that's where we're at now. And what you just talked about, Janette, with now trying to get through all this AI data and synthetic data and everything else, I think it's surpassed Google's ability to sort it. And the only way out of this now is the AI. So AI has created its own problem. Maybe it knew this and it saw this coming and it thought, let me, like the virus guy, let me create a virus so I can give you some software to solve it. But I think that's the only way out.
Did you have to say something to say in response to the AI is not creating new ideas? Or
yeah, I talk a lot about that as well. So the example, I don't think I've talked about it on the show, I have on videos, but if I go to the AI and I say, give me the 10 best things to do in Paris, it's going to be Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame, whatever. And it'll be the top 10 things for most people. And for most people, that's the best trip to Paris. But the AI can do weird things, like number 3 might be jump in the river. So go to the Eiffel Tower in the morning, then go to the Notre Dame, then jump in the river from Notre Dame, go for a swim, get out, go to the cafe. That's actually a really good thing to do, but it's ahead of me. I'm thinking it's nuts, it's lost the plot. But actually that would be your best experience for me in Paris, because I remember that, people would talk to you, there'd be a whole story. And it can, if you ask it, it can do things like that. And humans, I think we're too blinkered, we're too biased, and we can't get outside enough and come up with enough creative content. So I know that's going.
People want to jump in the river, though, Christian. That's the thing, right? It's like it wouldn't be on the top 10 because there's probably not enough people that want to jump in the river.
Emma Stone's aunt did in what is that movie? Emma Stone's aunt in that movie about Hollywood. There's a whole song about jumping into the river in Paris.
But
So there you go.
ultimately, like, who wants to know the top 10 X to do in Y? Like, is that a useful, like, we've learned to do searches that way because Google has taught us how to speak in robot Google language. Top 10 restaurants in New York City. But that is not, I don't walk up, to like our CMO and say, hey, Nancy, top 10 restaurants, New York City. Like, we speak like humans, and that's where large language models are going to become more valuable, because it's not that Google one and done. Oh, the search, I didn't like my results. Let me come up with a different search phrase and see if I get better results, and it starts from scratch. Like, that's the magic of working with an LLM, is that you're like, oh, thank you for those top 10 restaurants in New York City. Your response is really generic and has nothing to do with the intent of my request, which is, I want to know where I should go before I see The Great Gatsby on Broadway tomorrow. Is there anything near the theater that would serve Italian and have a price point for entrees under $30 and that my stepkids will like? And then we start to get into something that Google is terrible at. And I don't know that I would use an LLM for this today, because I don't think real-time information on what to do or where to go is its strength. But I think the language models have a chance of changing faster than maybe just Google search results do at this moment. Or maybe this is where SGE comes in and actually provides value. We stop doing the robot shortest search query possible, and we do longer searches that are going to actually have more unique answers that aren't just Eiffel Tower.
Hey,
I've
I'd like
something
to
say
weigh in
about-
here. Because that's really interesting what you're saying, Janette, and I think is the core of what we're even talking about here.
Yeah.
And it's so new. You know, we're not talking about like November of 22, whenever ChatGPT came out. Now we're now talking about, all right, where does the rubber hit the road? And Brennan, you started Propelic as an SEO agency. Now you're doing paid digital. And really what we're talking about is SEO as it was and SEO as it will be, and paid digital as it was and paid digital as it will be. And we're right on the cusp of that all changing. And some of the stuff that you were showing us, Brennan, that you're talking about, Janette. So I'd love to hear your predictions, because we don't know. Like, how is SEO really going to change? You know, as a marketer, what do we got to know? And how is paid really going to change? Because that also is very confusing. Like I said, I'm looking at those pages and I don't see where Google's monetizing, except for those couple cards you're showing us.
If you did a Google Travel search, you'd see Google Travel results. If that same search, Google Travels.
So let's just talk about
monetizes-
that and make it a little more practical for a tour operator or an attraction. And I'm thinking just SEO and paid. What is it that, you know, and I think this is prediction and forecast, but probably for what it'll look like in 30 to 60 days, right? What's changing? What's it going to look like?
I want to talk for a second just about user behavior to parlay into that, because I don't have as much faith as Janette does in the human population and their ability to write sophisticated questions. So my thought is, when I use the internet, being one of those simple humans, I love faceted navigation. Faceted navigation is when you're given the opportunity to filter and then filter more and filter more. It's like when you see a sidebar and you say, I want a flight that's between $200 and $400. I want a flight that's not on a 737 MAX 8, which is an option on Kayak now. But those filters are not something you get when you're writing a question. So Bruce, what you're saying about the future and bringing it down to tour operator, what you're saying about the future and can we bring it down to tour operators is essentially, when you search for a hotel right now, you end up in Google Hotels. Right? When you search for a flight right now, you end up in Google Flights. These are really solid and easy to use user experiences that someone understands and recognizes. Tours don't have that full thing yet. They just have, they don't have Christian knows a lot more about that than I do, but I haven't seen any sort of interface that you can interact with and filter. I personally, just thinking of myself, want to browse with filters in navigation. Does anybody like, does chat, I know chat is everywhere right now, but like, is that better than the opportunity to know what your options are?
So that's actually a really good point, Brennan, because I think that a lot of times people who travel, they are not well versed on all of the various things they should be looking for, they want to be looking for. It's like, oh gosh, why can I only book a middle seat? Or, you know, well, that's because that's the way the airlines are monetizing things now. So there you go. Just various items that you might think about like all the time. Lots of people who travel just don't understand that. So I do get where you're going with this. I think that sometimes people need to be led down a certain path in some cases. And if you're just, putting prompts in, oh, well, whatever the question might be, is that gonna get the person to the right answer?
Yeah, I think you could. I look at hotels and flights being very separate. Because for me, hotels is a good example. Booking and Expedia, it's not broken. It's great. I don't think there's much of a change needed with that. Those filters are amazing. I think hotels.com started that. I love the filters like you do. And for me, that's a perfect experience. I don't want that to be a chat. I don't want to do that via voice. That just works.
Yeah.
But I think things to do is a whole different thing, right? Because the filters are not there because the filters don't exist really. It's much more of a broad, fuzzy. There's free things, there's paid things. It's just much harder than a flight or a hotel to put filters on.
Yeah.
I think what Meta is doing with integrating completely, free open source AI, into Facebook and Instagram, like they're trying to get ahead of Apple, putting AI into Siri, which would probably be backed by Gemini based on what I've read. Like, I think the future, I don't think it's necessarily a 3 or 6 month future, but I think it is a 1 or 3 year future, is personal on-device AI that we just stop Googling things, because we just learned that we can say, hey, Alexa, or hey, Siri. When is Jeff and the kids? Oh, I said that, now Siri turned.
Yeah, mine
She's
is
so good.
Yeah, you just triggered all the series in the world.
Exactly.
thing
All
about-
the listeners for the podcast. Like we'll just say, hey, what is my fiance, and our kids, when are they free? Because I kind of want to plan a vacation next August. And they'll say, oh, I'm so glad, because it's been 3 months since you've had a vacation. By August, you're really going to be ready for one. And I was thinking a beach vacation would be good for you this time. And look, I know that you like to watch short form video to be inspired for what are you going to do for your next vacation plan. So I've, completely AI generated. There are 3 short videos for 3 different beach destinations that you can watch. And if one of them feels like the right fit, I already know what the price could be, for the 4 of you to book, and I'll take care of everything. Like
That's
I think
pretty
that's,
advanced.
yeah. So I was on a panel talking about AI and travel at CES. And I was like, oh, I think this is 3 to 5 years. And my panelists are like, no way is it going to take that long. So like
I think-
Google it could be entirely disrupted.
The thing that needs to be fixed before that is the voice assistant needs to let you say a whole sentence before cutting you off and say, like voice assistants. I struggle to see the US population, the world population, moving that quickly away from search.
Do you know why you say that, Brennan? Because you're a sheep and you have an iPhone and your iPhone doesn't work. If you're like me and,
All
you have
accurate.
Android and you have Gemini now and you're okay Google, it's brilliant.
Is it really?
No, my Google start. I've just told
And you could say, like, so real curiosity, the way Janette just said that, the way she said her question, and she paused and thought and edited a little bit, it will capture all of that.
It just says absolutely. I need to it said absolutely it can do that. No, I mean
Absolutely.
Well, it's not 100% yet, but it hasn't got my calendar in it. But that's
Yeah.
that's the next step. I can now just talk to it. It's an Alexa that works, right? And
Right.
it's
Once
not just good
Alexa
for time.
works,
Yeah. And Gemini's
Yeah.
there really close, and I can do search for travel, and I can't book the hotel yet. But I
Yeah.
can get things about my calendar when that's connected. I can open docs, I can edit docs. It's moving really quickly towards that.
right.
No, and
We haven't seen GPT-5 yet. It's going to blow everything we know about AI out of the water, and it's not like that's the final iteration of a large language model. Like we have to kind of start thinking, okay, what's like as a destination, I need to be thinking about what's next, and then kind of what's next after the next. And you can't assume that everything that's true today about how these things work, that's true in a year. It's going to be so exponentially better. I was speaking to a Salesforce business event planner who does all of their CEO events. So she did an event last October with Sam Altman for a small group of CEOs, about 50 people. And she said, she briefed him on the meeting. She was in the room for the event. And he's like, people cannot wrap their brains around exponential change and what that actually looks like. And as of October of 2023, we have not started on exponential change yet. All the things that we are seeing, it's like the bottom of the hockey stick. The change has not yet started. So once these things start really working the way that we think, if we think they ought to work that way, I think it's fair to say they will.
Going
It's
back
scary.
a couple of steps, Brennan, this is a question for you, and this is to do with the first part of getting your data into the training data. So Meta, nobody talks about what they're training on anymore. They just stopped talking about that about a year ago because that's their secret sauce now. And I think we all know they're training on synthetic data. So the AI is generating data to train the AI, which sounds weird, but it works. But there's a good argument to say that if me as a bus operator in San Francisco, the best thing I could do is just give it more content because it reads words word by word. Each word is the same as any other word, unless you're Wikipedia. So if I've got 1,000 articles posted on top 10 things to do in San Francisco, I've flooded, and this is the problem, and this is an awful thing to say, I've flooded the index, and this is not about Google, this is about giving it training data. So there's a fair argument to say everyone should just be producing 1,000 times more data, which I don't think anybody should because it's going to break everything. But for me, it might be the best thing I could do.
Yeah,
I
so
think it's making high quality data.
Yeah, I was just gonna
This
say, I
is-
think it's more about the good data than it is about just the data from what I'm.
it doesn't know. I mean, that's the
doesn't know,
thing.
yeah.
So this is the thing. So one of the things, like, I don't know if Google's doing this, but in theory, the ideal way would be to leverage some of their authority algorithms like PageRank and use that to indicate which content should have more authority. Is that possible? Y'all know more about LLMs than I do. To say this content should be more weighted
I think
than
when they are, like, that's a conversation the New York Times has been having, like, in their lawsuit against OpenAI. There's like, yeah, we know that you want our data because it's going to be higher quality writing than whatever you scrape from Reddit or.
But can you tell
4chan.
the LLM
No.
that needs more preference?
No,
Yeah,
but
it's called weights. Yeah.
you can only tell it, so you only feed it words, but what you can do is feed it. So Wikipedia, they say it reads it 4 times.
Oh, got it. So you just
That's
increase
all.
the frequency.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think if they somehow can find a way to leverage other search signals that have historically been a great way of giving people the content they're looking for. And I know that people are not happy with Google, but 96 or something % of the people who search use Google, so it works for people, right? I think if there's a way that they can integrate the two and somehow leverage the ability to understand what's valuable and then use that to weigh the answers, that's gonna produce a more quality outcome. In other words, prevent people from mass content spam being the source of information.
Mhm.
But right now, yeah, spam. That's the answer. Everybody go spam the internet. Let's go.
No. Oh.
Yeah, I know Janette loves it.
And by the way,
Edification of the internet.
anybody that Googles top 10 restaurants knows that it's just a crap list. I mean, honestly, when was the last time you looked at a list like that and went, okay, yeah, that's the #1 restaurant in New York City. I just know it is. I mean,
But the world is so commercial. Like, you look at Michelin Guide, who is supposed to be the trusted source of information. Atlanta just wrote $1 million check, or a multi-million-dollar check. I think it's at least $1 million for a 3-year
I thought it was a
contract with
million,
them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
come
whole
in-
other topic that we can
Well,
get
what
on.
I'm just saying,
is
what I'm saying is, there's
the
where's the
bullshit of the
quality?
Michelin guides, because you got it's
But
all
where-
pay to play. But that's a
Where
whole
is the
nother
quality,
topic.
though? I think it was Lori that was saying you used to trust organic search results. Well, organic search results early on in the early 2000s, those were people writing passion blogs, but everybody's making money off their content now. So I think that there's a monetization need across the board. There's nothing reliable on the internet. There's always a commercial intent, right? So it's hard to say what's valuable or what's not because everybody's trying to make money off of you. But are they providing value in that process?
Do we agree, though, that to give a little bit of takeaway, maybe, do we agree that every company today, tour operators, destinations, whatever, should be definitely not spam, but should be creating, this is what I believe, maybe I'll just ask you, I'll leave it open. I believe they should be creating more content, but quality content, absolutely. I think video is really important. People should be pushing video out all day on YouTube, because now they're training with video and that could start to feed in. difficult to see a direct connection, but I think it's going to be there. And I think the authentic stuff that you started with, Brennan, I do believe in that, and I think it's right, and the unique is right, and if Google says it's right, then it is. But I think people need to be more prolific with their content now than they were. It's not just about Google search results, it's about the LLMs, and it's a new time. Any takeaways from you guys?
I'll say, I hope we'll be focusing more, like, I can't focus on volume. I'm like, I'll have to think about whether the volume of words game is the right play here. I do see what you're saying with it. But like, if it takes you longer to do the content that's really rich and deep and novel, and it is not already on the internet, and it is like answering, it's a long tail search terms. Like, even if humans don't know yet to search with a long tail search term, I think ultimately that's what we're already shifting our behavior in search engines. And I think the natural language, deeper than just what's the top 10 in X, I think that's the future of it. It's like the first person emotive language that moves people to get off their couch and do something. I think that is always going to be.
Yeah, I
I'd
like,
say,
I like the long tail piece of that, because if it's training on Times Square, it's obviously got plenty of content, and you can't move the average much on that. But if you're writing about something really long tail, you can actually move the dial, can't you? Yeah, go on, Brennan.
I would say people are still gonna get inspired. They're gonna plan a trip. They're gonna book a trip, and they're gonna experience that trip. The part of our marketing funnels that are challenged as tourism marketers and as tour operators or whatever industry you're in is the inspiration phase, which by and far right now is dominated by referrals from family and friends regardless. So just move down the funnel. People still need to make transactions somewhere, refocus marketing initiatives further down the funnel because the transaction still needs to happen.
Bruce and Laurie,
So
final words. I also want you
Well,
guys.
I think that's actually really well spoken. There's a lot of places to go for inspiration, but it's just inspiration. And yeah, it's top of funnel. And it does get to friends and family a lot. And then you can see beautiful photos and videos on TikTok and shorts, etc. So how can you focus on that middle of the funnel so that when, okay, now I'm ready to book, now what? And retargeting is going away, right? So how do I get back to that place where
Maybe.
now you could talk about that on another show. That was a quote directly from you about retargeting.
Yeah, well, 2 days ago, Google walked that back again for the 4th time. So
okay.
it's now sometime in 2025.
So middle of the funnel, really interesting topic.
I think it's going to be harder to hide, right? I think that businesses need to look at an integrative approach because, where people would be looking at many different sites and maybe over here, they're not necessarily getting the same information. Maybe they're not getting the reviews. Maybe they're not getting a full understanding of the type of experience that they might have. And it seems to me like this is going to bring a more integrative approach to communication to the customer. And I think the customers are going to get a really good sense of what they're getting themselves into, whether it be, a hotel they're going to stay at, or it's going to be an experience like a tour. So I think it's going to be really important for businesses to shape up and make sure that they're, putting out good content, but it's accurate and the reviews that they have on their experience is good. Yeah, I think it's going to be just harder to hide with this kind of thing going forward, seems to me.
Great. I want to end with a quick fire, which we don't normally do, but when I'm moderating, I'm going to start doing this. So I'm going to ask you all the top country that you've been to, your favorite country, and then I'm going to ask you the top country that you haven't been to that you'd want to go to. And then I'm going to ask you all if you have a voice in your head. I know at least 2 of you have. And when I ask this question, it needs to be an audible voice. So when you're sitting there in peace and quiet, do you have an actual audible voice? Can you hear the voice talking to you inside your head? You might be the most disturbed, Brennan. So let's start with you. So best country you've been to?
No, I was so waiting to just go off what everybody else is saying. Best country I've been to is Japan, for sure.
And number one country you want to
100%.
go to that you haven't been to?
Number one country I'd like to go to that I haven't been to ought to be like Indonesia, maybe.
Very good.
Is that that's a country?
I
It's a
believe so.
country
It's a
and a
country,
city,
yeah.
right? Is that
It's
right?
a country.
It's a
No, it's
country
not
and
a
a,
city.
it's a
No.
state, it's a country state?
It's a
Oh,
big
shoot, I don't
freaking
know, I'm
country with
embarrassing
thousands
myself.
No,
of
you're thinking of Singapore. You're
I
thinking
am
of
thinking of
Singapore.
Singapore.
Now, do I have a
Right.
voice in my head? I
Yeah.
just had to I had to think about it, and when I thought about it, it was out loud.
How do people not know? How would you not immediately know the answer to that question? This blows me away. Anyway, I think it's weird, but it's 80% apparently. Bruce, I know you have a voice that won't be quiet sometimes.
Yeah, but I don't actually hear it. I mean, I think it all the time. Yeah, I
Then you're in a
self-
minority like me. We're the normal one.
self-talk all the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially when I'm out walking my dogs.
But these,
I
just
think-
to be clear, Bruce, these people claim they have an audible
I can
voice.
actually hear it. Yeah, that's not me. So I
And
don't.
it's different characters. These people are, I'm telling you. So anyway, let's go to your countries.
No, I stopped doing those things back in college. I think that would have caused that to happen. Italy still is number one for place I've been, and I just have this. Before I moved to Boulder, Colorado, where I am now from Philadelphia, I just knew I wanted to live in Boulder. I don't know why, but I just knew, and it just grew and grew and grew, and here I am 30 years later. Portugal is that for me, a country I haven't been to. Everyone has been there. I'll always hear great things, and I missed the boat of buying a piece of property there a couple of years ago that would have got us that golden passport and gotten into the EU. But I still want to go to Portugal.
Janette, voice.
I don't think I hear a voice.
Okay.
I think occasionally I will see words, like I'm a very fast reader, I don't really like watching video content because I'm like, takes too long, get to the end of it, but I can look at a page of words and read it almost like a picture. So I think sometimes I will see words in my head, but I don't think I'm hearing an audible voice. And I think Cambodia is my favorite country that I visited. And I would like to visit Vietnam. That's high on my list.
Very good. Laurie?
So my voice is silent. So that's the first answer. Portugal is probably my favorite country. And Africa is one that I want to go to.
You can't just say Africa. You got
Yeah, Africa's not a country, Laurie.
South
you guys need
Africa.
a geography
South
lesson.
Africa. South Africa. Sorry, South Africa. That's what I meant to say. South Africa.
What did you mean? I'm sorry, I was laughing too hard when you said it.
South
Where in
Africa.
Africa?
South Africa.
South
Cape Town.
Africa. Okay.
Can you say the seventh time, please, Laurie?
She really wants to go there.
All right. Well, I don't have a voice, but I'm going to keep doing some research on this voice thing because I think it's crazy that some people are walking around with this audible thing in their head and some people are not. How can we be so different?
A misunderstanding, Christian. I honestly do. I think the people you're asking are thinking that it's out loud, but they're
Yeah, that's me.
Right.
Because mine's like just it's my voice, but it's just me thinking.
It was a neuroscientist at MIT that said this. He seemed to know what he was talking about. But anyway, I'll keep researching. I'll let you guys know what's going
that
on.
could have been spam, Christian, actually.
Yeah,
He
web
looked
spam.
real. He looked just like a human. But yeah, who knows?
Was he an AI human?
Who knows?
We have to wrap up. So, Christian, you've been to a lot of places in the world. Where's your favorite?
I was asked this last night. I go to Mexico. I think Mexico is my number one. Not Cancun and all that stuff, but real Mexico I think is amazing.
Nice.
Also, I haven't been to Indonesia, so that's definitely in my top few. I think Indonesia I'll go with.
But your top one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You said top few.
Yeah, I've got a few in there. Tanzania I haven't been to either, but there's
Right. Well, let's wrap up.
Yeah.
We appreciate you guys staying a little long with us. We'll see how many listeners stay all the way till the end also.
Well, the quick fire was meant to be quick, but it wasn't quick. I think because you kept talking, Bruce, and gave us a whole thing about Boulder and whatever.
Well, I had to say something. I sure didn't have a lot to add to the important stuff.
All right, well, thanks everyone for joining. We should do a follow-up on this in a few months to see where it takes us, because we don't know what's going to happen, but we know it's going to keep changing rapidly. So
Well, I would invite you guys to do this at Arrival in San Diego, because this, who knows where it'll be at that point. And we've had you, Christian, do a number of things on AI, but I think we're entering a new, just a new era of AI combined with search that we should have on main stage at Arrival in San Diego for sure.
yeah, great.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, guys. Enjoy your weekend.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.